It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and this, of course, is the Phil Ferguson Show. This is episode 501. It is only a few days before the annual American Humanist Conference. You can find more details at conference.americanhumanist.org. It is an online conference this year, so even though you're only finding out about it a few days before the event, you can just sign up. And I think it's like $25. But an interview later in the show, I'm going to talk to Fish Stark, who is the new executive director for the American Humanist Association. And we go over the conference in more detail and more plans, but you can pause right now and go Google it and sign up if you want. It's on, like I said, it's online. You can do it from your house. You can do it from your laptop. You can do it in the park with your laptop. You can do it from Rome, wherever. Just pay attention to the time shift if you're in Rome. And you can enjoy the conference from home for a very small nominal amount of money. So you might want to check that out. Also have Polaris Plan 2024 Part 2, which is a discussion about the trade-offs of bonds versus stocks. I don't use a whole lot of other creative investments. I have not found them to be reliable, not as reliable and predictable as the way I do it with basically stocks and bonds. And of course, one of the big keys of the Polaris Plan is that you have the clarity and the granularity where you can see exactly how many dollars you have in bonds. It's not a guess, because I think I talked about it last episode. You can buy a growth and income fund that might buy stocks and bonds, and the ratio changes over time. So they might have 10% in bonds, or they might have 50% in bonds. So we want really focused index funds. The best company for that is Vanguard. And you can know down to the fraction of a percent what percentage of your portfolio is in bonds and what is in stocks. One other quick fun thing in my life, wife and I got back from seeing Front 242 in St. Petersburg, Florida. So that was a fun trip down there. We just hung around in St. Petersburg for a couple hours, went to a nice restaurant, get dinner. We went to the show. We happened to get in line really early, so we stood there and waited for an hour and a half maybe to even get into the facility, and it was outdoors. And yes, last night was 90 with 100% humidity, so that was fun. But we soldiered through because we were there to have a good time. Because we were at the very front of the line, when they finally let us in, we went up and we got right on the rail, on the wall. There's a gap between the stage and this wall, the moat, I'm going to call it. I don't know if that's what they use in the biz, but we were there. So it's standing room only, and we were as close as you could be. And of course, we were right in front of speakers. And when they turned that shit on, I mean, I've been in front of loudspeakers before, that where you can feel it move your clothes, you can feel it beat in your chest. Well, the bass was so intense, I could feel my scalp moving. The force was moving my hair and moving my skin around my skull. The scalp, yes, that's what it's called, the scalp. Absolutely amazing. The opening act, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't even know what the fuck he was saying, because he had his voice distorted for his lyrics. Pretty sure he was using words, but I don't know what they were. Really nice beats. He performed for like about 40 minutes, dancing around in the heat and a mask on, a big plastic white mask, which probably didn't help him with the heat, but he was only there 40 minutes. And so finally Front 242 comes on and they do the thing. Absolutely fantastic. If you don't know, go Google Front 242 and you want to look for their biggest club hit was Headhunter. And their second biggest hit was actually the B-side of Headhunter and got a lot of play in clubs because I know I played it. I mean, it's a long time ago, but that was called Welcome to Paradise. And that is actually where I borrowed the audio clip that you may hear in the show sometimes where it says, hey, poor, you don't have to be poor anymore. Jesus is here. That's from a Front 242 song. Because I saw a couple people on Facebook were like, Phil, oh my God, I just can never figure you out. You just do these unpredictable things. Front 242, industrial club music. But I was a fan of theirs when they were making new songs in the 80s, early 80s. And I'm still a fan now. And we enjoyed the show. Nice place in St. Petersburg. So you go check it out for some other concert. Very, very nice environment. I would recommend going when it's cooler, but you know what? If the artist you want to see is there and it's hot, do it. We got also very lucky because we were up in the front. The security people, we were talking to them before the show started. They had told us that their biggest concern is that someone might pass out or, heat exhaustion, just because it's so freaking hot and you're just sweating. So when the show started, they walked by us 3 or 4 times with crates full of ice cold water. They just give them to us. If you're behind us, you're not getting any free water. You had to go over to the bar. I don't even know what it costs, $5, $6 a bottle. We were getting it free. And I think the big distinction, and they know as a security team, as an event location, is that if you're up against that wall, you're not leaving because if you leave, you lost your spot. And behind us, it wasn't packed in. There was a lot of people, but you could leave where you were in the second or third row of people, go get a drink and come back. And it wasn't going to be a problem. Everybody was pretty cool about it. But if you leave the front wall and someone takes your space, I don't know. So we didn't test it. We didn't leave. Nobody left. So the staff, the security people knew that this is the behavior because they're there all the time. So they would walk by and hand us or allow us to grab out of the crate free ice water. So that was fantastic. So we didn't move. We sat in front of the speakers. I hope I didn't have permanent hearing damage, but it was freaking loud. The music was great. The performance was great. The lyrics and the words were fantastic. Very much enjoyed it. So that's the Front 242 conference. I want to call it conference, concert that we went to. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. We'll take a quick break and we'll go and we'll hear about the Polaris Plan Part 2. And we'll hear about American Humanist Association from Fish Stark. So don't go anywhere.
What did this person who made this world intend it for? And this is the point where you think, well, it fits me very well. The caves and the forests and the stream and the mammoths. He must have made it for me. I mean, there's no other conclusion you can come to. And it's rather like a puddle waking up one morning. I know they don't normally do this, but allow me, I'm a science fiction writer. A puddle wakes up one morning and thinks, this is a very interesting world I find myself in. It fits me very neatly. In fact, it fits me so neatly, I mean, really precise, isn't it? It must have been made to have me in it. And the sun rises, and he's continuing to narrate the story about this hole being made to have him in it. And the sun rises, and gradually the puddle is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And by the time the puddle ceases to exist, it's still thinking, it's still trapped in this idea that the hole was there for it. And if we think the world is here for us, we will continue to destroy it in the way that we've been destroying it.
Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This segment is the Polaris Plan 2024, Part 2. As I said in the previous episode, when I did Part 1, I did all this 2 years ago and then maybe 2 years before that. So I don't want to do it all the time because it gets boring. It doesn't really change that much. But last time we talked about the general idea of the portfolio. We hit on a lot of topics, and I'm going to kind of readdress some of those today. But today's segment, the Polaris Plan 2024 Part 2, is about the relationship between bonds and stocks. The cushion, which is mostly bonds. In my case, it is bonds versus stocks. A couple things to keep in mind. You might want to have some cash on hand in or close to retirement. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because just a few weeks ago I did a segment on that. So you can look back for that. But the cushion creates a drag on your long-term performance. The best way to make the most money in the long run, the future might be different, but based on all the historical data, is to have your money in stocks. A lot of your money, most of your money, all of your money in stocks. But there's other considerations in your reality, in your life, things that could happen, do happen, and you want to kind of prepare for those as well. So if you're in your 20s or 30s and you're just starting to save, 100% in stocks. That doesn't bother me at all. It might bother you. It shouldn't. Because when you look at the data and you look at the long term, and when I say long term, I'm talking 10, 20, 40, 50 years. Long term, stocks just crush bonds. There's no doubt about it. The data is absolutely solid. Where you get to a problem is that what happens if you need the money in a year? So in the past, someone asked me, said, "Hey, Phil, I'm going to buy a car in a year, and I know it's going to be about $45,000, and I have $45,000 now. What do you think of putting it in the market and then taking it out a year from now to buy the car?" No bueno. That's a bad idea. If you're going to buy the car in a year, you know you're going to need the money. The chances that the market goes down dramatically between now and next year, note, this is not a commentary on calendar year 2024. It's just a theoretical statistical thing. Something like 8 out of 10 years are positive. So 20% of the time the market goes down. If you put the money in there and it goes down by 20% or more, and you can't buy the car that you've been planning on, that's a buzzkill. You're taking a risk that you don't need to take. That's short-term money 1 year. Sometimes for me, even 3 or 5 years is short-term. Some people think short-term is the difference between the morning and the afternoon, particularly if you're some kind of day trader or trying to time the market. Not my jam, not what I do. So if you know you're going to spend in a year, you want to put it in something very conservative. It can be a CD at your bank. You could leave it in your checking account, which might not give you hardly any interest. You could put it in a very conservative short-term or ultra short-term bond fund, which today you might make 4% or something like that. So it's not so bad. But when you're investing for the long term, it's stocks. When we start talking about the cushion, that's give or take, depending on the details of your situation, let's say 12 to 14, maybe 15 years before retirement, you want to start building the cushion very slowly at first, because you're still, let's say, 15 years from retirement. You don't really need to have all your money or the amount that you need eventually in the cushion in bonds today. You need it when you get ready to retire. So I also do this a little different. I don't calculate. Well, I do calculate. This is not the driving factor, I guess, is the important thing. Sometimes in the industry, they'll talk about the 60-40 portfolio or the 70-30 or the 50-50. And when they say 60-40, it's 60% stock and 40% bonds. And some places will say, you take 100 minus your age, that's how much you should have left in stocks. I don't buy that. Nope, not for me. So if you're 15 years out, maybe you have 4 or 5% or 2% in the cushion. When you're 4 or 5 years out from retirement, you should be pretty close to having in the cushion already what you're going to need in the cushion, because we want an evergreen plan. We want a plan that works if you're 10 years from retirement, if you're 5 years from retirement. We want a plan that works if the market keeps going up. We also want a plan that works if the market goes down, so it doesn't ruin your plans. If you have no idea when you're going to retire, well, then you got to make an educated guess what you want to do. And if that's something that affects you, we can have the conversation about that. I have that all the time with clients where someone might say, okay, Phil, I want to be really aggressive and see if I can retire at 55. And they're 50 now. Well, okay, so that's 5 years from now, but you're still young. 50. 55 is still young. The numbers keep getting bigger as I get older, but they might say that if they understand, I guess, that they're taking on short-term risk for the potential of long-term gains, cool. The cushion could be really small. 0 if they really want to make a deal out of it, but maybe it's 5 or 10%. Maybe in retirement, the right cushion for them is something between 30 and 40%. But they're willing to take that greater risk knowing that if the market has a big drop, like it did in 2008, 2008, like it did in 1990, 2000, 1999, 2000, then your plans are not going to work. You're not going to be able to retire in 5 years, probably. You might have to wait a couple more years for the market to come back. You might have to work a couple more years. So that's a risky thing to do. But if you're young and it's easier, if you've got a job that's always in demand, that's easier. If you've got a job that pays good money, that's easier. If you could take some kind of part-time job instead of being 100% retired, it makes it easier. So the way I calculate the correct amount of cushion that you should have at retirement, and for me, 4 or 5 years before retirement, up to retirement, and throughout retirement, this all applies. Before that, earlier than that, you're just building the cushion a little bit every year. But you want the cushion to be as small as possible to maximize your returns, but as big as necessary. I think that's the way I phrase it. As small as possible, but as big as necessary. And what I mean by that is the purpose of the cushion for me is not necessarily to reduce the volatility of your portfolio, which it does. But the purpose for me is that you can set a fixed amount of money that you take out every year, and you can keep doing that whether the stock market goes up or down for a period of time. So let's say you're at retirement and you're 62. And I use this because at 62 is when I start saying you can take out 5% of your portfolio per year. Below that, it's 4%. So your portfolio might have to be slightly larger than the money you want out. But let's say you're 62 or a couple years older, you've got $1 million. If you follow the 5% rule, you can take 5% out every year of the $1 million, which is $50,000. And the next thing, this is something that messes with people, and it's cool. Where does the money come from? So a lot of people think, well, I'll just spend the dividends and never sell into the equity. You could do that, but if you want to sell dividends only, and right now, a portfolio that has a generous portion of bonds and U.S. stocks and international stocks, it might have a yield of 2.5%, maybe a little higher if you have more in bonds. So if you can live on 2.5%, well, yeah, you can live off the dividends every year. But we're talking about 5% here. So where does the other 2.5% come from? You can get it by selling bonds, or you can get it by selling stocks. So the stocks and the bonds don't yield enough for you to take out 5%. So you've got to sell something. If you have a period in time, and I'm doing this late summer, early fall of 2024, the market's done pretty well for the last couple of years. If you have done really well and the stock market's up, you can take that extra money out. So you have $1 million. Let's say you get $25,000 in dividends, stocks and bonds combined, and you need another $25,000. Well, if the 70% of your portfolio was stocks and it just went up 20%, well, that means it made $140,000. It's easy to take $25,000 out of that. You're still way ahead. You don't have to dip into the cushion. You leave it alone. You spend the dividends from the bonds, but you don't sell any bonds. If you get to a point where there's a year or two or more where the stock market is down 10, 20, 30, 50% or more, you don't want to sell the stocks or the stock bond funds, the stock index funds when the market's way down. So you're still going to get some stock and bond dividends, but now you need another $25,000 to get to the 5%. So you could sell $25,000 of your bonds. Not ideal, but way better than selling the stock index funds that are down. So that's something you can do year after year after year. And as you keep selling bonds, a dollar value of the bonds that you hold becomes smaller. And this is counterintuitive for some people. It's very, very tricky. So if you're $1 million and you have 40% in bonds, and I'm doing this because it makes the math easier. You have $400,000. If you take 25 grand out, obviously you can do that for quite a long period of time. 25,000, 4 years would be 100,000. To get to the full 400,000, it'd be about 16 years you could do this. Now, keep in mind, as you're selling the bonds, the bond dividends that you're going to get each year become smaller. So you can't actually do this for 16 years. And I have a model in my spreadsheet that I use that can calculate this for you to kind of estimate how long will the cushion last. So each year, again, using the 5%, we'll call that 50,000. What I would recommend is that you have money go to your local bank account every month. And in this case, that amount would be about $4,000. Again, I'm rounding 4,000 times 12, $48,000 a year out of your portfolio. And it just shows up in your bank just like you used to have money when you were working. What you don't want to have is hundreds of thousands of dollars in your bank because you lose the sense of perspective of the scale of what you can spend. That's why I like that $4,000 that shows up every month in your local bank. And so you can adjust the cushion to make sure the bond and the stock dividends are high enough to fill up the cash in your brokerage account or your IRAs so the money can then go to your local bank account. If you're over 62 and you don't want to take out 5% or $50,000 because maybe you get Social Security, maybe there's two of you get Social Security, maybe you have pension, maybe you have a rental property, maybe you have a farm that you have a profit sharing with someone who plants the crops and you share it with them because it's your land, they're doing the work. All of those things make it easier for you to have a smaller cushion. So the cushion, like I said, you can calculate, and I have a model built in front of me here where it's 35.9% of the portfolio is cushion. Is that the right number for you? Probably not. Is it 40%? Is it 45%? Do you want to really be conservative and have it 50-50, 50% bonds and 50% stocks? Are you more on the aggressive side and you can pull it off with just 30% in bonds? Again, I can calculate what that percentage is, but that's not the driving factor. The driving factor is your budget. You need to have a pretty good idea what you're going to spend in retirement. That can be very tricky for people. What I normally tell people, let's say your total income for the year is $100,000 and you're saving $20,000 for your 401k and or Roth IRA, however you're saving it, that means you're living on 80. So if you go to retirement, I'm going to expect that you're going to live on 80. You're just going to transition. You're only changing how much you work and the source of your income. Instead of the source of your income being labor, it's going to be the portfolio, but you're still going to live on 80. Why 80? Because you were doing 100 before and saving 20. So you weren't living on that 20, you were saving it. So your budget is 80. Now, it's quick and dirty. To do it this way, you can, of course, make it much, much, much more complicated. I generally shoot for a target of your income in retirement should be about 100% of what it was before retirement. A lot of models will suggest that you can live on 80% or 70%, and that may be true for you, but if we start assuming 100% and you find out you need less, that's fucking great, right? You have too much money, boo-hoo. If you calculate 70% and then the portfolio cannot spin out enough money, now you have a problem. You might have to go to work part-time for a couple of years after you retire to make sure the portfolio is a little bit bigger. So the cushion is there to protect you when the market goes down. Usually that market goes down and comes back up relatively quickly. You do get some extreme examples like after 2008, actually the next year the market was up 32%, but you still weren't even. It took 4 or 5 years. Probably the worst was 99, 2000 into 2001. Depending on how you slice and dice it, the market could have gone down 50%. If you were going to retire in 2001 and now your portfolio is about half the size you thought it was going to be in retirement, that's a problem, right? You're not going to retire. You're going to work. Now, you may work 3 or 4 more years, and that allows the portfolio to grow back. It allows you to add more money, and it allows you to be older, which may or may not. I mean, it's good that you're still living, but that means you have fewer years in retirement, so there's less stress in the portfolio. So that's the playoff that I want to have. And like I said, I have this calculation to figure out how many years your cushion will last. So you need to know your budget, how much you're going to spend in retirement versus how much you're spending now. I like to think of it as 100%, but if you can convince me that it's some lower number for you, cool. If you want to just travel all the time, then it might be more than 100% of what you were making when you were working. So those are the things that run through my mind. I'm kind of feeling like this is not the most structured response, but that's how I think of it. The percentage of your cushion, the cushion is not calculated by me saying 30% or more conservative 40% or more conservative 50%. What I want to do is figure out how many dollars in bonds do you need to go how many years in retirement so that you have that assurance and that comfort and that protection that you don't put yourself in the position of selling stocks while they're down, either by choice or by necessity. And by necessity, I mean you need to pay your bills. By choice, because you panicked. Because you're like, oh my God, the market just fell 30%. I'm going to sell half of all my stocks in case it goes down more. And aren't you the lucky motherfucker because you took out 30% and 3 months later, it's jumped back 20 or 25%. And now you put your money back in and then it falls again 20%. See, that's the short-term game that you just can't win. So that's part 2, basically the playoff of the cushion versus your retirement, the cushion versus stocks. And I think for part 3, I'm going to go over the specific bond funds that I use. So check into that for the next episode. And we're going to wrap this up and get on with more fun stuff in the show.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Welcome back, everybody. We will continue with the show. And as promised, my special guest today is Fish Stark. No relationship to Tony, but you are related to another famous Stark. And who is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, first, Phil, I'll say I do actually have a brother-in-law named Tony, but he wasn't forward thinking enough to take my sister's name. So unfortunately, he's still Tony Ramirez, but he could have been a comic book character.
Yeah, very nice.
But no, my dad was Pete Stark, who many folks in our atheist, humanist, freethinker community know as the first open non-believer in the United States Congress.
Excellent. And I believe, I'd have to check my records, he was kind enough to be on the show a year or 2 ago. Maybe it was 4, because time flies. But we're not here to talk about him. We're here to talk about how cool you are. And apparently you have a new job. So give us some information about yourself and the new job that you have. Oh,
I wonder if my dad discovered time travel because he passed in 2020. But I imagine, I know you've been doing the show for a long time. So
yeah.
I wouldn't doubt he came before. Anyway, jokes aside, I just started, and this is day number 9 for me as the new executive director of the American Humanist Association. And as you know, as probably many of your listeners know, the AHA has an incredibly rich 80-year history of being the beating intellectual, moral, spiritual heart of the humanist movement, and being one of the first lines of defense against the right-wing religious nationalists.
And you think that there is a strong religious nationalist movement in the United States, or are you just being paranoid? What do you think?
Well, I mean, let's look at the facts, right? 6 weeks ago, we were looking at former President Donald Trump leading in the polls for the presidential race. And even now, we're only looking at him a few points back and tied with Kamala Harris in key swing states. Now, President Trump has many, many of his staff contributing to the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which explicitly endorses Christianity as what they believe should be the foundation of American government, and is full of plans to gut the federal bureaucracy, replace civil servants with far-right Christian nationalist sycophants, and essentially, theocratize America and force people to live according to their religious edicts. I mean, it's the Christian rights attempted version of Sharia law, and I think we are genuinely close to that in case this if the election goes in a certain way. Now, obviously, as the executive director of the AHA, which is a nonprofit, I can't advise anyone on who to vote for, tell them who to vote for. But we can certainly say, if this plan were to be enacted in January of 2025, we would be looking at an America that, for the first time since our founding, was veering deeply into the kind of religious state we were established to avoid.
So I want to make sure that I say this correctly. American Humanist Association is a 501c3, and you can't direct people on who to vote for, not to vote for, but you can definitely bring up information about an independent religious organization called the Heritage Foundation and the horrific documents that they have provided, and we could discuss that if you wish. And there's that fine line. And of course, since you are a 501c3, people can donate to help the cause. How do they do that?
Well, anyone can donate to or become a member of the American Humanist Association at AmericanHumanist.org. Donating any amount makes you a member. It helps support not only our work to keep church and state separate, but our work to educate people about humanism through the Center for Education, which does everything from master's level certification courses to humanist chaplains who serve us in whether in prisons, on college campuses, and hospitals, or curriculum for children. We're building out some of the most robust moral development curriculum for secular homeschooling parents who don't really have, who are sort of subject to basically reappropriating whatever the Christian right homeschoolers have to offer them. It supports our local chapters around the country. We have over 240 local chapters, and our magazine and our online version of the magazine, which is a robust quarterly journal of humanist thought. There's a lot of stuff that we do that people can get access to and support through making a donation. And I will say, I can put another hat on. We also have an affiliated 501c4 and PAC called the Center for Free Thought Equality. And when I'm speaking as the executive director of the Center for Free Thought Equality PAC, I can definitely tell you who to vote for. And that PAC has endorsed Kamala Harris all the way down. Excellent.
And that would be a 501c4 organization?
So the Center for Free Thought Equality is a 501c4 that is affiliated with the American Humanist Association that was established last decade. And the Center for Free Thought Equality has a PAC, a political action committee, and that was we support humanist candidates and candidates who are maybe not humanist but are firmly aligned with advancing secular values around the country. So, for instance, we played a role in helping elect Jamie Raskin in his first race. We support dozens and dozens of openly humanist and secular state representatives. We helped coordinate the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, which includes 22 members, most of whom are religious, but are very committed to the idea that America must remain a secular democracy and that there should be ironclad separation between church and state.
Excellent. Now, someone could donate to that organization directly, could they not?
They most certainly could. And what we do with that donation is, the Center for Free Thought Equality PAC is using that money to help elect priority candidates in races around the country. Because, here's the deal, Phil. Right now, we had for a while, my dad was the only open non-believer in Congress, and then there were none for a little while, and then another California congressman, Jared Huffman, came out as the only open humanist and non-believer, and he really proudly wears that label. If we want to elect a second one to Congress, we've got to be investing right now in city council races, state representative races, state senate races, mayors, the people who, not only are going to make good humanist-aligned policy at the local level, but eventually will be ready to step into those positions of leadership when they come open.
Absolutely. And just for clarification, and again, correct me here if I have this wrong, if someone donates to the 501c4 political organization, that probably won't be tax deductible.
That's right. So the donations to our 501c3 are tax deductible. Donations to our C4 and our PAC are not tax deductible.
Excellent. It's just something that comes up that you happen to know something about. So see, you knew about investment tax stuff, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I'm learning about some of the fundamentals of nonprofit financial management on the fly. I've worked in the nonprofit space for a while on the programming side, managing large teams of people, developing programs at organizations. But as with any job, there's a learning curve, and that's part of mine.
Absolutely. One of the things that I love to talk about on my show in general is conferences or activities. Do you guys have any conferences planning coming up, something next year? What's your status with that?
We do. So one thing that I'm really excited to share with folks on your show is that I'm not sure when this comes out, but next weekend, September 14th and 15th, we are having a virtual conference that is open to all. We have a number of incredible presenters. We're obviously going to be talking about, Christian nationalism and the sort of threats to American democracy that the Christian right is presenting. But, so much of humanism is not just about what we don't believe, it's about what we do believe. And so there are going to be lots of conversations about, how do we find meaning, purpose, and reason to make our way towards ethical living in our daily lives. We're going to be talking about, how we as humanists live our values every day. So whether you're interested in hearing about the church-state separation work and political work that we do and how you can get involved in it, or whether, like a lot of humanists, you are, black, you don't have a traditional religious belief, but you sure are looking for meaning, purpose, and community, the conference is super accessible. It's online. It's drop in and drop out, and we hope people will come. But we're also really excited that we're going to be having an in-person conference next year in Chicago. So people should keep an eye out on the American Humanist Association's website as we announce those dates and the conference program later this year and early next. If you're on our email list, you'll get all the details. And, it's always a great opportunity to build community and meet interesting folks like our humanists of the year.
Absolutely. So you don't have the dates for 2025 yet. Is that what I understood? But it's in Chicago?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Phil, I'll be honest. Those dates have absolutely been planned on day 9. It's one of the things that I haven't found a way to stick in my brain yet.
That's okay. We have time. So once you have, you have the online conference to worry about, but in a few months or maybe after the holidays, contact me, and either you or somebody else can come back on and talk about the 25 conference so we can give people time to get tickets and register. Since you and I are new friends, you don't know that I have a house in Orlando and Chicago. So Chicago is very easy for me. And matter of fact, I don't know how many years ago. I think now what I should do is anytime I look back in time, I have to add at least 2 years for COVID. But I know I've gone to the American Humanist Conference, at least I'm pretty sure it was the American Humanist Conference in Chicago, I don't know, 7-8 years ago now, maybe. But I do want to mention, because this is, by the time people hear this, it's going to be a day or two from this listening. You have the online conference. It's your 83rd annual conference, September 14th and 15th. And because it's online, you don't have to book a hotel. You don't have to book a flight. Is there a cost to register for the convention?
there's a small cost to attend the conference. I'm looking that up right now because I can't remember if it's $20 or $30. It is the cost for AHA members is $20, and the cost for non-members is $25, and the cost for students is $10. That gets you access not only to all the conference sessions, but to some of our virtual networking happy hours. And I'm going to be doing some of my first town halls with our members at the conference. So it's a great place to come if you want to be able to ask questions and have a discussion about the future of the AHA. One of the exciting things we'll be doing is we're about to launch a really robust slate of programming to combat Project 2025 and make sure between now and the election, people are aware of what it could mean for their families and our freedom to believe. So that's something where we'll be unveiling some of that programming at the conference, and it's something people won't want to miss. And
just for anyone who is not sure how to get to your website, of course, listeners, you can type in American Humanists. It's AmericanHumanist.org. The website has links to the conference, or you could just go directly to conference.americanhumanist.org, and you can see the speakers, the schedules. You can register. And like we said, $25 depending on your membership, and you could of course join and get the discount right away. That is fantastic. Hopefully, tens of thousands of people sign up. Although I know sometimes atheists and humanists aren't the most cooperative, like herding cats kind of philosophy.
I would love to see tens of thousands of people sign up. While I can't promise that, I know there are going to be many hundreds of people from around the country who are going to be attending, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities, not just to hear from presenters, but actually to get in breakout rooms and connect and engage in dialogue with new friends, which I think is, I've never met a humanist who wasn't up for a really good discussion, and believe me, we're not going to disappoint on that front.
Excellent. Now, another thing I always like to know about, and you've only been there, like you said, 9 days. Is that right?
9.
9. So most of my listeners, you heard it here first, by the way, right? So are you up to speed on any of the legal battles? Is there any fun or entertaining things that you can discuss or recent wins that listeners should know about, to validate the work that you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So, I think folks know one of the really exciting things about the American Humanist Association is the fact that, through our Appignani Humanist Legal Center, we've been litigating, for years and around the country, a lot of church-state separation defense cases. And last month, something really exciting is that we won a major victory for the Establishment Clause in one of those cases. I think many of your listeners may know this, some may not. Some years ago, the police department in Ocala, Florida, hosted a prayer vigil in their official capacity, a public Christian prayer vigil, which is pretty clearly an unconstitutional orchestration of a religious event by the government. And last month, the United States District Court for the Middle District of Florida ruled in our favor in the case we brought. They said that was unconstitutional. Now, of course, the far right has indicated that they are determined to appeal this case. They've announced that they're going to do that. And, we're prepared to keep fighting it as long as we need to, because ultimately we aren't going to cede the principle that Jefferson and Washington, right, that our our founders worked to establish to differentiate us from Britain, that we were separating from, that we were not, and we never will become a state where any kind of state religion is enforced, certified, encouraged by the government. So that's a recent major victory, and one of the things that I'm excited to do is work to chart our legal center's path forward.
Absolutely. And of course, I'm extra excited because you would have no way of knowing this. I did mention that I live in Florida, but I'm about, 15, 18 miles from that city, Ocala. So I can relate to the surprisingly inherited fundamentalist Christian attitude from a lot of organizations around here. So thank you and congratulations, of course, on that win. And I hopefully it stays in place, and I look to many more victories in that area. What have we not discussed that I should have asked about?
Man, I'm learning, Phil, every day about new programs that the American Humanist Association has been running. A lot of people don't know that, for instance, we run prison chaplaincy programs and prison groups that make it possible for non-believers who are incarcerated to be represented and have a place to engage with their views. There's a lot of Christian programming in prisons, but we're providing, I don't want to say a counterweight to that. We're providing another option for people who share our views.
Right.
And of course, I talked about the secular homeschooling programming. We're also launching a series of webinars this fall for folks who want to, whether they want to take a 10 to 13 week master's level class on humanist thought, or whether they want to do sort of a 3-session mini exploration into humanist thinking and ideals. We're offering a lot of programming for people who say, I want to wrestle with these big questions that I have, and I want to do it in community with other humanists. And of course, we're doing a lot of work with coalition partners across the progressive movement to not just defend the separation of church and state, but to really push back against all the ways the far right is trying to enforce its religious values on everyday Americans, whether that's protecting the right to choose, protecting the LGBTQ community, and especially protecting LGBTQ children against efforts to turn their public schools into Sunday schools. There's a lot of work that the AHA is doing, and I'm excited to figure out how we continue to iterate on and focus and really clearly communicate the work in the months ahead.
Excellent. And I know you have a hard stop coming up, so we want to be respectful of that time. How can people contact you, and are you available to go talk at other conferences or different groups, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, not only am I available, I'd love to. One thing folks may not know about me is that I moonlight as a stand-up comedian. I've performed comedy in over 13 states, and one of the things that's really exciting about this role at the AHA is the opportunity to communicate humanism to people and to help people who are looking for somewhere to belong and something to believe in, who haven't found it in the traditional religious community, find it in humanism. So I'm excited to, we're planning speaking trips for me all around the country right now. And if there's any, whether it's a college campus or a humanist, atheist, or agnostic group, or a Unitarian church, or any place that would want to have me, I'm available and eager to talk about what it means to be a humanist, how we're responding to threats to secular democracy in this moment, and maybe even tell a joke or two. So folks can find my contact info on the American Humanist website. But if folks want to email me directly, it's fstark, my first initial and my last name, at americanhumanist.org. I think we're better as a movement when we have deep and robust conversations. I think I'm better as a leader when I get a lot of feedback and ideas from people that I can synthesize into our greater vision. So I'm really excited to hear not just from members, but from folks who are interested or have questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for being on the Phil Ferguson Show. I really appreciate you sharing this information with my listeners.
Thanks, Phil. And I look forward to listening to the episode, and maybe I'll even learn a few things about annuities, IRAs, and all the things that I, as a 29-year-old about to start a family, should really have a better grasp of.
Very good. Thank you again.
Thanks, Phil.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
My father, the man responsible for my education, taught me that Islam, rightly understood, is a religion and philosophy of peace. In fact, he said that for any society to be peaceful and prosperous, it had to institute the rule of God, or Sharia. I came to disagree with my father. It was a gradual process that started when I entered and lived in societies such as the Netherlands and the United States that applied man-made constitutions and laws. Both countries are peaceful and prosperous. I now disagree even more with my father that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the amount of security that is deployed tonight here, the amount of security that is deployed for the Richmond Marathon. 6 months ago, the Boston Marathon was bombed by two brothers who invoked the founding documents and the founding father of Islam. I disagree with my father when I look at the wanton killing of the Westgate Mall in Nairobi by Somali men invoking Allah and Muhammad to justify their horrid act. Kenya is the most hospitable country to Somalis fleeing their own country, so it distresses me even more. I disagree with my father when I look at the reports this week of 30 men and women worshipping in Iraq who are killed by a suicide bomber invoking the very same God and the very same prophet that they invoke. I disagree with my father when he says that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the 120,000 dead in Syria, Syria is now a stage of a proxy war between Islam's two most important and most influential nations, the Sunni Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Shia Islamic Republic of Iran. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read about the almost daily reports of the destruction of churches, the pillaging of Christian property, the rape of Christian women, the terrible exodus of Christians and other religious minorities from Muslim countries. All this is done by men who invoke the founding father and founding documents of Islam. I disagree with my dear beloved father when I read about the teenage girl in Pakistan who's shot point blank in the head by a man invoking Allah and Muhammad because she wanted education. In the name of Allah and Muhammad, women are forbidden to drive. They're forbidden to own their own reproductive rights. They're forbidden to do anything unless they have permission from a male guardian. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read these founding documents and I study the history and the example of the Prophet Muhammad. In there, I find an insistence of war and intolerance towards infidels, the hypocrites, those who associate God with others, homosexuals, women, and so on.
It's getting to be that time where we have to wrap up the show. We're going to say goodbye as friends again, and we'll meet back in the next episode. But before I do, I wanted to cover a couple of things. Upcoming conferences. Of course, we did talk about the AHA, American Humanist Association online conference that you can go sign up for right now because it's happening in just a few days. Let me see here real quick. The dates are, come on, they have an updating website. There it is, September 14th through 15th of 2024. So hopefully you hear this in advance. Also coming up later this month, it's snuck up on me. I've talked about it before. The Freedom from Religion Foundation Conference this year, September 26th through the 29th. And that's only 2 to 3 weeks after this episode goes live. That's in Denver, Colorado. So if you can make it to that, that's, of course, in person. So it's going to be a little bit more than the American Humanist Association Conference. Lots and lots of great speakers at that event. My wife and I do plan on being there. So unless something weird happens, we're going to be in Denver, Colorado for the Freedom from Religion Convention. You can Google that. On their website, I'm just looking at it here now, it says they still have tickets available, and theoretically you can buy tickets at the door if they do not sell out, but they think they might sell out. So good for them. So go check their website real quick. That's ffrf.org, or just Google Freedom from Religion Foundation 2024 National Convention, and I'm sure Google will take you right there. And a little bit later on in October, I've talked about this before, is the CSI Con, Center for Inquiry CSI Con. I don't love the way they do it, but that's in late October. I'm looking over at my calendar here, the 24th, 25th of October, and my wife and I will be in Vegas. And on Thursday night, the 24th, we are doing a meet and greet with friends of the show. So if you like the Phil Ferguson Show and you can get there, this is not necessarily affiliated or sponsored by CFI or CSI or anything like that. It's just something I'm doing. If you happen to listen to the show and you want to come hang out with other show listeners, or just you want to break from the convention. It just started, but it's on Thursday the 24th. From 3 to 5 p.m., we will be at the Fuel Bar. That's right in front of the Horseshoe Casino, so you can come join us there. I will be there at 3 at the latest. I'm going to try to wear a really bright colored shirt. I don't know which one yet, but look for me. I'm not hard to miss. We'll do that and hang out and have a drink or two from 3 to 5. And then from 5 on, we're going to go over to Wahlburger, which is also right in front of the casino, and have dinner. I don't know how many people are going to show up. I'm not counting them. There's no tickets. It's just going to be whoever shows up. It could be 4 people. It could be 40 people. Fuel Bar is small, but they have tables around the outside of it. Easy peasy. No matter how big a crowd we bring, we're going to have fun there. Wahlburger, and this is a Phil thing, I have every expectation to not get seated as one big group. Now, like I said, if it's 4 of us, sure, we get a table for 4. Easy peasy. But if it's 37 of us, I don't want to show up to a restaurant and say, we need a table for 37. It's just not going to happen without planning in advance. And I don't know what the numbers are. So when we go over to Wahlburger, we'll probably break up into groups of 4 to 6. That might mean 2 tables. That might mean 5 tables, whatever. Just wing it, get your food, enjoy the food, talk to the people who are near you, move to a different table if you want to. And then by 7, I will be leaving. You could stay longer if you're having a great time at Wahlburger. Around 7, I'm going back because that's the conference opening appetizer meet and greet thing. And then they have, I think it's Brian Cox is getting an award at 8 p.m. inside the Horseshoe. So you definitely want to be back for that. Anyway, more time than I wanted to spend on this segment. We'll wrap it up. If you have questions about the Polaris Plan, or if I confused you, or if I didn't answer something, let me know. Send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And hopefully you have the ability to sign up to the AHA conference online. Hopefully you can go to the FFRF conference later this month in September 2024, or in October, go to CSI Con. I hope to see you out there on the road soon. Until then, ciao.
Protozoa is my name, I'm just a single cell. I'm sorry that I have no proof, perhaps it's just as well, of my beginning back in time when from a glob of goo supposedly I started things, the end of which is you. For untold centuries I thought that all was going well. Then I became dissatisfied as just a single cell. My fortitude, my guts and grit would stand me in good stead. I made this as my final goal, to be a quadruped. I had to take it step by step and over centuries, but that was nothing, for I knew I'd turn out as I pleased. Ambition surged within my cell down in my gloppy bog. By protozoan effort I became a pollywog. Evolution, the science of confusion. Because of all the missing links, they don't know what to do. Evolution, incredible delusion. They tell us that we started out as just a glob of goo. For umpteen million years or so, I wriggled all about, encumbered by my stupid tail, then fins began to sprout. Or was it legs I next acquired? Really, I forget. With evolution in control, you don't know what you'll get. My patient waiting bore much fruit, as happens without fail. I changed into a reeking ape with teeth and hair and tail. It was such fun to be an ape. I loved to swing from trees. Oh, I loved to munch bananas, and I loved to scratch for fleas. I howled at all my comrades, and I gibbered at the moon. And little did I know that all my carefree days were doomed. Millions of long years went past, and then a million more. And suddenly I noticed that my tail was feeling sore. Well, it dropped off and my hair fell out. Old Darwin strikes again. I was a jolly ape, but now I turned into a man. Would you believe I started out as just a glob of goo, and changed from fish to bird to ape, and ended up as you? That theory is as theories go, rather odd and weird. The truth, however, is a lot less complex than you feared. If you, my friends, will listen on, you'll find the whole true story, in which there's somewhat less of goo and rather more of glory.